I want you guys just to have a healthy understanding of who Bart is. Bart's a super dope artist, super dope creative. Bart is
Appreciate
an
you, Ref.
entrepreneur. Okay, don't get it twisted. He out here getting the bag. Okay,
Yeah.
he's I would call him a kingdom capitalist or an ethical capitalist. Okay, we get in the
Word.
bags.
My guy
Okay.
with these gang colors, Ref.
But to your point, you are someone that is personally and maybe theologically even conservative while socially being liberal, which people don't understand, and I want to tap into that. But what I really want you to talk about, and again, and this is good, like Sunship Music was in here, and I would love to have him and you talk, because I think this is good to have folks in your life and access to folks who can push back on some of these notions. One of the things that I appreciate about you is that you can break down concepts like critical race theory. And as
Yes.
everybody's freaking out and yelling cultural Marxism, you could actually have a very sober conversation and explain to us what that is without, from a biblical worldview, from a Christian worldview, and explain to us
Yeah.
which parts are congruent with our Christian worldview and which parts maybe we do need to dismiss in terms of critical race theory or whatever. So I don't know if you want to dive into that, but you are on a
Word is
train of
bond.
thought.
That's kind of like a good connector because when I was in college,
Uh-huh.
like I was saying, I saw these, you know, white kids doing all the stuff that they told me, would get you killed as a black kid in the hood. And there were no police anywhere, bro. Like kids smoking, drinking, having sex, doing drugs. And like there's like, giant parties, you can smell weed outside the house, music blasting down the street, no police anywhere. I'm like, yo.
Mhm.
So that kind of pushed me into studying sociology in college because I was really fascinated by the concept of deviancy and how it's perceived in different communities and how certain assets can kind of like mediate your deviancy. And deviancy is just like breaking from what the society says you're supposed to do. And so like I was like, yo, so whiteness in a lot of ways, and especially whiteness when coupled with affluence, right? Or wealth can almost give you permission to be deviant in society, or it can, obfuscate your deviancy. And so I was like, that's really weird. So it
So hold on,
actually
hold on,
like
hold on.
so
Let me chime in. So that would look
yeah,
like something like when we look at the numbers, white kids, black kids use drugs at the same rates. That's pretty much been proven.
yep,
However, when black kids do it, they're thugs, they're criminals, they're mischievous, they're disgusting. When white kids do it, they're just going through a phase. They're just partying,
yeah, they're
right?
just human beings, right?
Right.
They're just being curious.
If someone who's black, if there's protests, then they turn into riots. They're thugs. They're animals. If a hockey
Yep.
team wins the championship and the white kids riot, they're just some rowdy kids, right?
Yo,
Is that those are
or
real
check this,
examples?
bro.
Go ahead.
On our campus, it's the wildest thing, bro. People, if it's the first snow of the year
Uh huh.
and a bunch of white kids decide to run around campus naked with flags and mob through the dorms, that's just kids having fun.
Mm.
I was like, what do you want me to do?
At a
They were
Christian
like, yeah,
college.
yes, bro. They was like, bro, you got the biggest bathroom on the dorm, bro. We're
Yeah.
all gonna come back and have a party in your dorm.
Yeah.
And I'm a nice person, bro. Like I grew up like seeing multicultural people. Like, I'm like I feel like in my heart I'm a nerd, but I'm also from the hood and don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
So I was like very nice, and I think they got it twisted. And I was like, nah, like you're not coming to my room, bro.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And if you come in, you're gonna see what's up.
Yeah.
And they were like, whoa, what's wrong, bro?
You're a Second Amendment. You're a Second Amendment guy.
Bro, I just had these hands, bro. That's all I had. I didn't need no Second Amendment, bro. They was gonna get the first and the second. You know what I mean? They was gonna get both of the things. I was like, look, you not coming in my room naked, bro.
Yeah.
That's on the hood, bro. You not coming in here doing none of that. We not taking no showers. Nah, fam.
Yeah.
Y'all do that over there.
Yeah.
And that really for me was just a wake up call that like, yo, the rules is different.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is somebody who was like fairly like, respectability politics. Like again, my parents, like we had kids at our house all the time, like giving food out all the time. Like we were really involved in the neighborhood. But at the end of the day, I was like, the theological understanding was if you do something wrong, it's your fault. If something bad happens to you, it's your fault. And then I'm like watching people do the wildest stuff, like stuff, bro. The thuggiest thug in my neighborhood would never think of, bro. They would never knock on my door, bro. The biggest GD or Vice Lord or Grape Street or anybody would never knock on my door and be like, "Hey, yo, homie, we need to have a party in your shower naked." Like that's never happening. So I was like, the level of disrespect. I remember freshman year, somebody was like, "Yo, can I call you my N? Can I call you my nig?" Like it was just the wildest stuff. And I was like, there has to be an explanation.
Yeah.
And I grew up conservatively Christian, and there was no explanation for this. There was none. There was no. I read the whole Bible multiple times, like studied hermeneutics and all this stuff growing up as a teenager with my parents. There was no explanation in my worldview for this stuff.
Yep.
So sociology and critical theory, and again, my professors were Christian, so maybe as a caveat, but like it gave me a framework to explain these things.
Right.
And they were coming from a biblical worldview. They were like, look, we understand that the world is fallen. Any Christian can understand the fact that like we have indwelling sin or original sin. There's sin that is not a conscious decision.
Yep.
We can agree with that. We can agree there are powers and principalities that affect or kind of push the world's direction.
Yep.
So as soon as we say, hey, all we're saying is racism is one of those indwelling sins.
Come on.
Along with lust and all those other things.
Come on.
It fits perfectly. And as soon as we say, hey, white supremacy is one of the structures or powers or principalities that can affect society, right? That exists kind of outside of people's intent. That made perfect sense.
Right.
Once somebody introduced that idea,
and especially
so I never really
introduced it from a biblical worldview. Because if you're getting that breakdown from a biblical worldview, hey, we believe that man is flawed. We believe that man is broken. Why do we not think that man in position of power can corrupt systems of power? Why is that a crazy racist idea?
Think about this. Why don't we believe there are demonic systems at play that men don't even know they're a part of?
Come on.
That there are demonic systems at play that are influencing men to do things that will benefit them, even though they don't really understand why. They see, ooh, well, this gives me a... Come on, dog. Like, this is not new information for any type of, like, I would say, Orthodox Christian. So I was like, for me, it made sense 100%. So to me, like, when I see, and this is kind of... I have friends who are conservative and friends who are super liberal. That's why I say I don't claim gang colors. Like, I'm not out here claiming to be conservative or liberal or Republican or Democrat. I'm just trying to put in the work in my hood. You know what I mean?
And you voted third party.
Jay Simmons, black woman.
So you're not on a Democratic plantation if somebody's going to push back, be like, oh,
come on, bro. Like, I was like, this is so wild, bro. I was like, this is a black woman. She's a classically trained musician. She loves the Lord. She's pro reparations. Bro, these are all the things that matter to me. So, like, I'm going to vote for this person. I'm going to suggest that my friends and family vote for these people.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, moving beyond that, I think that for a lot of people who kind of have newly found the ideas of conservatism, maybe they've never been introduced to them, and they're like, wow, there is some merit here. I'm like, yeah, power to you, brother. There is some merit there. I feel like, God made all things good, right? And so in there's always something to be redeemed. But please don't get it twisted, yo. Like, these conservative people is not your friends. Like, these large conservative conglomerates is not your friends either. So if you're coming from the Democratic Party and you're leaving because, well, you don't live up to your ideals, I'm sorry to tell you, like, the dudes trying to hop in my shower, you know what I mean? Because it was the biggest, those was pretty conservative. You know what I mean? The people who was like, yo, can I call you my nig? Like, and yelled it across the lobby my freshman year. Like, that dude was conservative. He was a theology major.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the people who, like, called my homegirl the N-word driving down the street, those people were conservative. So, like, please don't get it twisted that, well, because it's not Democrat, that it's good. Like, those two words are not antonyms, right? And, like, Democrat and good are not antonyms. Like, we know they're not synonyms, but they're also not antonyms. So, like, don't get it twisted that just because it's more than this binary thing. We really have to dig into the scriptures and hold each group and each situation to the principles that Yeshua lays out in the scriptures. And I think that was the biggest thing that I saw. Like, man, it was like, yo, I was let down, bro. I was like, wow, this place, this is where Billy Graham went. This is where all these, famous missionaries went. And I was like, yo, these people are super racist. You know, not all of them, of course, but like this. And the worst part was the people who weren't outwardly racist, they would cover for the people who were. They would be like, "Oh, it's not that bad." Give them a like. I'm like, yo, y'all more concerned about whether people are having like a dance party than people who are like smearing God's image on somebody. Like that's wild.
Yeah, that's good. So when it comes to you looking at someone like Trump who wants to now, who he's calling CRT racist and just lumping everything in, right? He wants to not do racial sensitivity training. He thinks racial sensitivity training is racist. That and especially when you're introduced to these ideas, not from a Marxist anti-God worldview, the way it may be presented in certain circles, I don't know. But you're presented to it from a Christian worldview in terms of, hey, these systems are corrupted, you then you're gonna feel a way and be like, hey, like this doesn't make sense because this system isn't teaching racism. It's attempting to expose the hierarchy.
It's attempting to explain racism.
That's good.
Like that's the thing that people get twisted. They think they're making it racist. No, it's literally saying, because it's the same thing that people do with Martin Luther King. Like, I'm from Memphis. MLK 50 was last year, I believe, or 2 years ago. No, I think it was last year. And so they had this big thing. People from all over the world came. John Piper came. And they came to Memphis and they did this thing. And like at this event honoring MLK, you know, John Piper starts questioning his salvation on the basis of the colleges he went to and the papers he wrote at this like really liberal theological college or university.
Wait, John Piper did this publicly?
Bro, he did this at the 50th anniversary. He's like one of the keynote speakers at the 50th anniversary of King's assassination. It's like it was wild, bro. He was like one of the only white speakers too. It was like, what are you doing, bro? But I think to me, this is one of those things where again, context matters, right? And so for people to question, for instance, again with me, for people to question his salvation when not acknowledging the fact, based on the papers he wrote at the liberal college, without acknowledging the fact that he was not allowed to go to the conservative colleges that his conservative parents wanted him to go to, is ridiculous. It's anachronistic, right? Like it's acting like time isn't real and he could have like sprouted wings and changed his colors like Joanna Man or something like. It's not possible, bro. Like he didn't have any other choice. This was his only option. It's like going back a million years and being like, why weren't they driving a car? It's like, bro, there were no cars. What are you talking about? So like within this situation, people get frustrated about people turning to critical race theory for explanations when people have been asking for explanations from conservative systems and constantly been denied or told they were making stuff up. So you can't act like this system is creating a problem when you don't even acknowledge it exists. And the people who are turning to it ask you for an explanation and you ignore them.
Do you think when Trump is asked about these issues, when he's asked about Black Lives Matter, do you think if he were to acknowledge that there's some degree of structural racism, that there's some degree of issues with the remnants of the war on drugs, the remnants of the 100-to-1 crack disparity, you think if he owned it, do you think, because again, 1 out of 5 black men voted for Trump in Florida, which is crazy to say out loud. But I think
Florida's crazy anyway. Bro.
But I think if he owned it, I think if he just and this is the frustrating part for me with Republicans, is there's zero acknowledgement to own any degree of structural racism without blaming the Democrats. And if you own it, any degree of structural racism, you dismiss it as cultural Marxist ideology, right? And it's just like, gosh, it's fairly obvious to me. You know what I mean? So my question to you is, do you think if Trump owned a degree of structural racism, acknowledged maybe there's some issues with police brutality against communities of color, do you think he could have won more of the black vote over?
I mean, the short answer is yes. But the long answer is he still would have lost. I think it would have ended up negating any votes he gained with the black community. He would have lost with the hardcore racist white community that is a part of his base. And so Trump has worked really hard to create a very nuanced and like almost like fallacious base that's built on a lot of things that he said and then walked back and then said and then walked back. and he's doing, honestly, some really smart PR. He started out very obviously racist, right? First, it was just weird. Then he moved into weird and racist. Then he put people like Steve Bannon in his cabinet, and had all these like dog whistle moments. Then into his presidency, he kicked Steve Bannon out, right? And he starts denying or decrying white supremacy, as we've seen him do a bunch of times. And literally, you have to pay attention to when he did these things. People ask me all the time if Trump is racist. I'm like, I really don't care. My bigger issue is that he's cool appealing to racists. To me, that's worse. It's worse to say like, oh, I'm not a murderer, but like, I'll give them whatever they want as long as they'll vote for me. I'm like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
So you don't even hold to these values. You're just cool manipulating these people into giving you what you want, and you'll give them whatever they want or tell them you will until you don't need them anymore, and then you'll discard of them. And so to me, I think that if Trump were to have acknowledged these things, he would have too far alienated a lot of racist people in his base, and he knows that. That's even why, to me, the Proud Boys thing, that people say, oh, he misspoke. Like, I listen to like a lot of conservative people and a lot of liberal people, and some people will say he did it on purpose. He was trying to tell them that we're going to take over the world. And then some people will be like, oh, he just made a mistake. He misspoke. I'm like, no, he lied on purpose.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the Proud Boys are not an explicitly white supremacist or white nationalist organization. They're like,
I agree with you, but stuff. My point is Trump knows how that appears.
Yeah, and again, I think, and that's why I think he failed. If you look at Scott Adams, who was a huge Trump supporter, then he predicted Trump was going to win by a landslide in 2015. He's the cartoonist of Gilbert. Scott Adams came out and was like, he just lost my vote because that was an easy alley-oop. All you had to do was just denounce it, and boom, that's an easy alley-oop, and he blew it there. So I think he failed right then in that moment. I think that was an easy. I don't care how many times he's denounced it in the past. If there's any question by anybody
bro,
that your
it's
dog
like if
whistling,
you ask me if you ask me, hey, bro, do you like little kids romantically? I don't really care how many times you ask me that question. I'm gonna say, bruh, no, every time. You know what I mean? Like, so
I'm not gonna be like, stop asking me that. What do you mean? How dare you ask me that? No, no. You denied that as many times as it takes.
Yeah, bro, you're going to say no, and you're going to get more mad every time because it's offensive to you that someone would suggest that you like that or you support that. So for me, again, Trump has to walk this very fine line of trying to galvanize poor white people, who many of those people within that base, you have some people who hold to racist ideology. And we got to be honest about the history of poor white racists. Right? Like, poor white racists in general, from my understanding, go back to Bacon's Rebellion, who originally you had indentured servants, Native Americans, and black people all living and working together under the wealthy class. And they rebelled, right? In Bacon's Rebellion. They had a very anti-racist, BIPOC coalition, of folks who were like, nah, we don't like being slaves and indentured servants. We're going to rebel. And so then they created a system of privileges based on race and color, where you have the Native Americans who are treated a little bit better, the blacks who are treated the worst, and then you give the indentured servants, like, they're still poor, they still live in shacks too, but you say, well, hey, you can go deal out punishments to the other two groups. Yeah. And so then there's an investment in the system marginally enough to keep those people from like seeing their common plight. And so for me, right now, like, poor white people have been getting played for a long time. Trump didn't do nothing for like any of these middle American countries that he went around promising he was going to do stuff for. Trump hasn't done anything tangibly to help poor white people, because to do that, he would have to do stuff that would also help poor black people. Yeah. And I don't think Trump is really invested in helping poor people at all. Like, it seems like he was more interested in galvanizing his own power and getting whoever he could to his base. So to answer your question, I think Trump could have got more black people on his side had he denounced white supremacy every time, and had he identified himself as an anti-racist, or said, like, I believe systemic racism is real, or even that the effects of racism in the past affect the present. But again, he's walking this really fine line.
I think the platinum plan is an acknowledgement of structural racism on his part to the best of his ability.
100%. Yeah, consciously, and a lot of people on TikTok have brought that critique up, and I think it's one of the better critiques that they brought up, honestly, is it's like, you can't support this and then say that you can't even really say Trump has done more for any other president for black people and then say that black people have been fine all along. Because you're basically saying no president ever has really done anything for black people except Trump. what is he, the 45th president? So 44 out of 45 presidents didn't care about black people is what you're saying. That's the inverse of that statement. So
that's
no, I feel you, bro. That's true. But you know, I think that Trump's just walking this really fine line of like trying to like pull a little bit over here and a little bit over there and a little bit from over here. And a lot of times the people he's pulling into his base don't ideologically line up, and there's cracks and fissures in that base. And I think if he loses, it's because those cracks and fissures got exposed. Right? Where like he just tried to bring too many people without actually addressing their real concerns.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that, man. I think that's a lot of, and again, guys, I wanted Bart on just because I wanted you guys to have access and hear from someone who is not a snowflake, liberal, soy boy, like all the goofy caricatures you guys put on somebody. Like, that is not Bart. He's an entrepreneur. He's a creative. He's a husband. He's a father. He's not out here on some like baby mama nonsense, right? Like, this man's a stand-up man of God. So there's a lot of you guys that are watching this that think that people who adhere to certain views, you're dismissing them and lumping them all together. And it's not, and that's not fair. So I just wanted you guys to have just a different perspective to hear from. You know what I mean?
And even my last point would be even on reparations, right? Like I used to not, but I think the more I study it, the more it's righteous. There's no really, like, it's clear in the Bible that when you wrong someone, you owe them reparations. And in Bible, in Scripture, we see even that restitution is that biblical restitution is. My man Brian Laritz preached a sermon about this, but like biblical restitution oftentimes requires more than just basic reparation. So Zacchaeus is a good example, right? Reparations would have been him giving back what he took. He gave 10 times over after he met Yeshua. He was like, I've been so transformed and I'm so in awe of the grace I've received. I'm going to give 10 times back.
Yeah.
Was it 10 or 4? I'm not sure, but I'm going to give multiple times back what I've taken, right? And so it's like, if we really are engaging in this, it should be no problem.
That's good.
But anyway, I'm also in but even though I firmly believe in that, and that's one of the critical things for my vote, like you have to endorse reparations. Also, I'm not waiting on reparations. Like I'm not going to wait on them.
Because we get in the bag.
Yeah, we're going to get the bag regardless, right? And so like, that's kind of one of our big things with our company is like coffee is a space where we're kind of creating self-imposed reparations where it's like, well, we're going to look at the things in industries that were taken from black people and we're just going to go into those industries and dominate.
Yeah. That's good.
And so because of, just the will, I'm not, if I really believe, and Lavoisier says, he said this is a great point. He was like, yo, if you really believe the government's racist and America's built on systemic racism, like, why would you ever expect them to agree with you or do something?
100%.
Like you that kind of puts you in a position where you kind of have to create systems and plans that don't depend on them.
We got to create our own generational wealth, and we got to create our own economies, and we got to create our own ecosystems. 100%.